Welcome back to Face the Nation. I'm Major Garrett filling in for Bob Schieffer. We're joined now by Washington Post investigative reporter Dana Priest, who won a Pulitzer Prize for her work at the Post in 2007, uncovering the Walter Reed scandal. We also welcome David Finkel, her colleague at the Post, who has a new book out called Thank You for Your Service. And we're also honored to be joined this morning by Colonel Tom Manion, author of a new book, Brothers Forever, about his son and his son's best friend who were killed in service and are now buried next to one another at Arlington National Cemetery. Colonel, thank you for joining us this morning. I'd like to get your opening thoughts on the Veterans Administration scandal, as we're calling it in Washington, and what you think needs to be done.
Well, Major, you know, for me, on this Memorial Day weekend, when we think about those guys that are coming home and for them not to have the type of medical service and attention they need is really unacceptable. But it's also something that it's no surprise it's been going on for years. And really there's too much bureaucracy, there's too much red tape, and we really just got to get past that and deliver the services that are needed for these guys. They've done so much for our country and we owe them just that.
Does it pain you to read these stories and discover either allegations or in some cases confirmed reports of veterans dying simply waiting to be seen?
Well, it's just not right, and you know, our country should be able to figure that out, and we just really need to get to work. We need people to come together and look for solutions. There's too much of the finger pointing. This is something that's been around for a long time. Those involved in the military know that Veterans Affairs has been having issues for a long, long time. So let's get together and let's make it work.
Dana, you did your work in 2007. Immediately thereafter, there were resignations and or firings. There was a bipartisan commission. How would you contrast the sort of accountability index now against what you saw and what you reported in 2007?
Well, there's some things that are similar, which is that this story originated by some courageous insiders from the VA, a doctor and some staff members who were willing to come to the media and tell them what was going on, allegedly. The government has responded by saying we're outraged, which happened before. Those who don't say they're outraged got fired in Walter Reed. One of the disturbing facts that's different this time around is the immediate politics of it. Last time they seemed to be more willing, the politicians on Capitol Hill, to work together. There was a bipartisan commission appointed by President Bush. They worked together. They came up with a lot of solutions. There was much more money that was poured into both the situation for active duty soldiers, but also the VA. And like the Colonel was saying, the Veterans Administration has had problems forever. It's a very large system.
For those who may not remember, briefly, walk us through what you discovered at Walter Reed, why it caught so many people by surprise, and how you think it differs materially from reports of veterans dying for care now, waiting for care now.
Well, this was a report about the situation of neglect, really, at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center for active duty returning troops that was 3 miles from the White House. A White House that had continually said we were going to do the best we can for our troops, and an American public who said, basically, no matter what we feel about the wars, we don't want to take it out on the troops, we're going to support them. And lo and behold, that's not what was happening at Walter Reed, which was a place that was underfunded and run by people who had compassion fatigue is the name for it, really. I mean, and this bureaucracy issue, people were getting, especially outpatients, it wasn't the medical staff. But as outpatients, people were getting lost in the system. They would go back to their rooms where they were supposed to be convalescing, and nobody would check on them, and they would forget their appointments because they had PTSD and traumatic brain injury, and paperwork was going missing. So this time around, it's not, you know, right now it's limited to one place. It's expanded to 26. The IG is going to look at that. It's the Veterans Administration where all those folks now are. So the bubbles moved from one to the other.
And David, this brings us to you and your book, which is searing on so many different levels, emotionally gut-wrenching. I compliment you on that very difficult reporting work. Okay. It's about those who have come home and the difficulties they encounter. some of which are aggravated by the veteran system, some of which are just things you bring home from battle itself. Talk to us about your observations and your reaction as you evaluate this whole story.
Well, it's beyond my lane to say what ought to be done. I can tell you that I spent the last 7 years writing about an Army infantry battalion that was sent into the surge. These were 800 young men who went off to war with a young man's sense of invincibility, if you will. And when they came home 15 months later, they had matured, they were changed. They, in some cases, degraded by the experience of fighting a war. What they did, what they didn't do, what they saw. The battalion of 800 includes 14 guys who died who will be remembered this weekend. And the others came home in various stages of being okay and not being okay. And what has happened to them since coming home in April '08 has been basically, the book is a chronicle of recovery. And that includes attempts, some good, some bad, to go into the VA system primarily for mental health help. Like I said, they had a tough time. And anecdotally, some have gotten terrific care, and some have gotten abysmal care. But what any of them would say to you is, they went, they fought. These were not their wars, not their policies. They carried out policies. They did well. They came home. They were a little messed up by the experience. They want to get better, and they would all say they deserve kind of an even playing field in their attempt to get better.
Colonel Manion, your foundation is about leadership and service. To the degree you interact with those veterans of your son's and his best friend's age, what kind of stories do you hear? What is their level either of frustration or alienation from the VA system itself and trying to recover from some of the things that David talked about?
Well, I think what we're seeing, Major, is that there's a lot of opportunity for nonprofits to get in there and offer innovative solutions for these veterans. And we're working with the veterans in different ways. You know, we're bringing social workers in. We're helping them transition into new opportunities, new jobs. We're trying to take a holistic viewpoint into what these young men and women need. And, you know, Is that one of the things you think Americans may be wondering this Memorial Day weekend, what they could do, what I could do individually, is to look to nonprofits or see what they might be able to offer to fill in some of these gaps? Well, certainly today. I mean, you see a number of nonprofits that are out there doing innovative things, addressing the needs that aren't being addressed by the VA and our government. And I would say in the interim, that would be what I would definitely suggest, is that we need to get behind some of those efforts that are going on and support that, at least now, and give them the backing that they need to work with the veterans to get the job done. Dana, you mentioned whistleblowers who came to you and also set this story in motion, not just in Phoenix, but in Columbia, South Carolina, Augusta, Georgia, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Right. This is not just one place. It is system-wide. Sam Foote wrote an op-ed in the New York Times identifying himself to America as one of the whistleblowers and said the Justice Department needs to get involved because the people who will be questioned by the Inspector General's office within the Veterans Administration may not tell the truth, either for fear of retribution or losing their own careers. That's why you need criminal investigators. Based on your experience, do you think that's correct, and do you think that's the next step that has to be taken to get to the bottom of this?
Criminal investigators? Not necessarily. What I do think is you have to understand that the system's very decentralized. There's over 150 hospitals and another 800 almost outpatient centers, and you can't expect, or the most effective way is to work with this is to have members of Congress who care about the hospital or the outpatient center in their district paying attention to it, and the local media paying attention to it, so that whistleblowers who can step forward or who choose to can be protected. And the reporting and the pressure from the administration, from Congress in particular, who gives the funding, can be put where it needs to be. You need to look at the individuals here, the individual hospitals, the individual nursing homes. The VA runs nursing homes. It's a very mix and match sort of record. The VA does fine in some places, and usually it's places where you have a lot of people from the outside looking at that hospital, including members of Congress, saying what's going on, what are your stats. So it is a decentralized system and sort of needs to be treated that way in order to make it work individually for individuals.
David, a moment ago, Dana mentioned that the bubble has moved, and the soldiers you put together in your book, followed in your first book and now your subsequent book, are in that bubble that's moved. And you have a story in one of the early parts of your book about someone driving to an appointment and it's on the wrong day and they're trying to squeeze themselves in just because they forgot the right day for their own appointment. Some of that's part of this story. What, and I'm going to give you the last word on this, do you think, based on your reporting, these veterans need most and are not being served best by through the VA?
Well, if we're talking about psychological trauma, recovering from what war can do to you mentally, this is a tough population, and you're exactly right. There's a point in the book where a very good soldier, out now in need of help, is going to his VA appointment, and he messes up. It's the wrong day, and as he and his wife fight about this, the VA, they figure a way to get him in. They adjust to his problem that day. But later in the book, you'll see the same soldier again trying to get help, and what happens that day is he's a good guy, and he's just waiting to find out how shameful he is as a human being because of the way he thinks of himself, and he goes in, and as soon as a VA person doesn't listen closely enough to what he's saying, this small window that's open for this guy to get help, down it comes, and the guy's out of there, and he doesn't want to get help again. So no one did anything wrong in that case. The VA acted well. A person didn't hear and said, "Tell me again what you said." Opportunity lost.
Right. David Finkel, author of Thank You for Your Service. Colonel Tom Manion, author of Brothers Forever. Thank you very much, Colonel. And Dana Priest, investigative reporter of the Washington Post. Thank you very much for your time. We'll be right back with a look at the latest lawsuit to hit the National Football League.